this is Terry Wada with Collabo Creative, a local service design company here in Indianapolis, and it is another Wednesday, so we are coming at you with going back to our lessons, but except we're not going to lessons from quarantine because things have shifted in the past week or so, and there are lots of other events that are going on around us that we absolutely need to take into account to think about how does it shift how we're learning things? What are new reflections that we've had, especially in the last week with Black Lives Matter and George Floyd, right? So we have shifted our series and we're calling this Lessons for Now, because these are lessons that we are continuing to learn, seeing what's going on in our communities, seeing what's going on in the lives of the people we love, and taking these lessons to heart and thinking about how do we move into this new space, this next reality or next normal, with with those lessons that we can change the way we think about things, change the way we interact with people, so that we can improve all of our situations, right, as a whole and as a society. So I have two wonderful ladies who I've learned so much from in the brief, I would say relatively brief time that I've known each of them. They have been amazing in influencing how I see the world and how my perspective on what it means to be both a business owner and a business leader. And so I'd love for them to introduce themselves so that they can share their lessons with you as they have shared their lessons with me. So I'm going to start off with Denise. Could you introduce yourself?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Terry. I appreciate being here today. So my name is Denise Prawl, and I am located in Fishers, Indiana, and I'm the president and owner of Whiteboard Learning. I consider myself to be a referral marketing strategist. So what I do is I help business owners create a system and a plan to get non-client referrals through their door so they can grow their business while they're sitting at their desk doing what they do that makes them money.
All right, and Stefanie, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks Terry for having me. And so great to meet Denise today. So my name is Stefanie Crevens. I'm the president of Stefanie Crevens and Company because I ran out of really creative names for my company, but I get to work with CEOs, mid-level leaders, and consultants who need help managing change and figuring out what growth really looks like and how to make that happen with their team, with their leaders, with themselves. I work mostly with professional services folks, so people who are consultants or provide other services like that, and I get to help them learn and grow by becoming better leaders who know how to deal with conflict and hold their people accountable.
Thanks for introducing yourself. You guys are amazing. This is why I've learned so much from both of you, different perspectives, right? Like how do we do marketing and make that effective in a way that's not just like all the noise out there? And then Stefanie, like dealing with change and conflict is one of the most difficult things as a leader, at least from my perspective, to do. And even right now when you think about the larger social impact of that, like conflict and change is what we're going to have to work through. So not even just business leaders, but community leaders, and just being loving citizens to one another, I think. So highly relevant, both of what your expertise are. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing your lessons. So I always like to start off with one thing that we're grateful for because it gets us on the right foot. So I'm going to jump back to Stefanie this time. Can you share one thing that you're grateful for today?
Yeah, I am most grateful for, I think just the life and the company that I've built. Today is one of my dream days. I had 3 of those like best days ever last week, and I'm living one today. I'm just unbelievably grateful for the people that I get to work with, how I get to do it, and the change that I get to create in the world.
That's awesome. Love it. How about you, Denise?
Sunshine. I never realized how much sunshine affected me. And what an impact it made on my day and how I felt each day until I have been at home so much. And so every day that there's sunshine to me is a good day.
That's awesome. Yes, sunshine and everything we've built, right? And I think that's always the good thing when we think about what we're grateful for, because a lot of times it leads us to, if you're a religious person, what we're blessed with, right? And if we really want to acknowledge how we're privileged, then that those are the things that we are grateful for, because we are privileged and we're lucky to be here on this platform. So thank you for sharing that. And first thing, we're going to jump into our questions. So we shifted this first question just a little bit because it used to be what's one thing you learned during quarantine, but we want to make sure that we're encompassing the bigger dialogue of what's going on in society, because we're not just dealing with COVID-19 and we're not just dealing with having to be separated from our loved ones and our workmates. We're also having to deal with and be upfront with Black Lives Matter and taking that into account and bringing those lessons in. So we're going to shift this question to what's one thing that you've learned now that can be relevant to all of our lives right now and most likely for the nows to come, right? So I'm going to throw this out to Denise first. What's one thing that you learned, what's one lesson that you've learned for now that, and tell us a little bit about how you learned that.
I think really just to use even one word of where I am with everything we've been through so far in 2020 is awareness. I think I personally, and I think a lot of others have moved through life. We move through life so quickly, and it's mark something off our to-do list, get to the next meeting. I have to do this. I have to do this. And when the world basically sort of stopped and I had to slow down, it really helped me create an awareness from something as simple as how much toilet paper you use. That's where we started out. It's like, oh my gosh, will I be able to get toilet paper? I need to be aware, which I wasn't, which is a silly thing to start out with, but it is a starting point for me. And then it's the awareness of how much food I have in my freezer and how much is in my pantry, things that I've never slowed down and stopped to think about. But even then it moved on to bigger things in my life. It moved from toilet paper and food to just really reevaluating the things I've tolerated during all this time. It's like, why do I sit in fast food lines? Why? That's money. That's time. What are the things that I'm tolerating in my business, and what have I been tolerating in my personal life? And it's just made me so very aware of every dollar I spend, every choice I make. And especially with the things that have been going on lately, a huge awareness of, I'm a bit older, so I've seen 60s things going on and that sort of thing, but a really huge awareness of how much has changed, but then how much hasn't changed. Mm-hmm. And that has been something I've really been talking about with some of my friends is like, yeah, we've come a long way, but not nearly far enough. And I don't think I ever stopped to think and process that before. So I think what this whole 2020 has brought to light for me is just an awareness of my own life and awareness of the bigger picture of the world. Mm-hmm. So I would say that is my one main lesson learned so far through all of this that we've been going through.
Oh, that's fantastic. You gave me goosebumps as you were talking, like that whole idea of awareness. And at first I was just like, yeah, toilet paper, that was the issue. I forgot about that.
Where it all started for me, it's like, I never realized how much toilet paper I use. I better slow it down. And then it's like, my freezer's empty. And then I was in a panic over that. And then it just took on a bigger life. It took on a bigger life as I was going through that process. And so that's just, and I'm not going to change that. I want to slow it down and continue to be aware and making sure anything that I am tolerating in my life, I'm no longer tolerating from things that are big and small.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. Stefanie, let's throw that question to you. What's one lesson that you've learned from now that's going to help us?
Yeah, to riff off that a bit, I'm just going to say it in a different way, that I have really come to learn and realize, and I knew this, but now I know it, that everything I have is because of what I've created. My business has been very good through this, yet I also entered quarantine working 18 hours a day and unable to extract myself from that because of the business I had built. Mm-hmm. So from a monetary perspective, that's awesome. Yay, go me. My dogs and my husband were mad at me because I was working so much. Not yay me. I did all of those things. And so I early on decided when quarantine happened, I'm going to exit quarantine with a better handle on my business. Like, I'm not going to get myself in this situation again, because my goal is to stay married for the rest of my life, not serve client needs for the rest of my life, right? Those things don't always go together. And so just really owning the fact that everything I've created, and I get to decide what sticks and what doesn't stick. And as it relates to the social situation and Black Lives Matters and how it's erupted and everything that's come with it. You know, my husband and I intentionally live in what used to be a low income community, and we moved in, and it was Puerto Rican family, Black family, the Crevenses, Hispanic family, you know, and every house was different. And as our neighborhood has become gentrified, it's become more and more full of people that look like me and have even way more higher incomes than we do. And so, you know, we've purposely been the bridge between people of color and people not of color, and people of privilege and people not of privilege. And so I'm proud of that, yet there's always more work to be done there. And when situations like this happen, it really calls to attention for me the fact that, if I have to own who comes into my home for dinner, they look like me. What does that say about my life? And to watch the tension emerge in our neighborhood has been really sad. And I'm not going to use the word scary, but I will say very sad to watch how I need to respond to it as a white person and how my neighbors who are Black need to respond to it. Those are two very different situations and two very different worlds that we encounter on a daily basis. And I understand that. I can almost empathize with that grief, I want to say, but not full. I can never fully empathize because of the physical package that I was born into. But just not knowing what to do with that, but knowing that what I have right now I've created, and there's pieces of our lives that I can be proud of as it relates to social equality and helping people have empathy on both sides, yet also acknowledging that I don't do all the work that I purport to do, and there's more that I could do. And just I'm still in the space of discerning that and figuring that out. And I don't have the answer yet, but just fully owning like, everything I have, I've created. That's the life coaching side of it. And now couple it with Black Lives Matter, I also need to add in the label of, a lot of what I have comes because of my privilege. What do I do with that? Ooh, I just realized that saying that out loud, y'all. Like, that's a big one. So what do I do with that? I don't even know, but I've got to do something.
You don't have to answer it right now.
No, yeah. I just like unlocked a whole other level of learning. You know, I've known I've had privilege. I've known I've created my life that I currently have. Now I got to put those together like peanut butter and jelly and figure that out in a new way. So that's probably my work as soon as we hang up, is figuring out some of that.
Oh, I love it that we helped to spur that a little, at least, because I mean that is the true way that we need to be moving forward, is taking this time to stop and reflect, because in that reflection we have new thoughts and we have new realizations, and that does help us become better human beings, right? And I really love what you had said in the taking, like, owning everything that you've created, knowing that everything you've created is based off of what you've done, and both the good and the bad, right? Like, yes. Everything that's great, that, like you said, you can take credit for that, but also the things that are not so great, we can take credit for that, and then explore, what do we do with that, right? How do we move forward? So thank you for sharing that as well, and just being vulnerable and like sharing your learning right here on on this platform with all of us. No, it's fine. It's fantastic. That's what we want, is we want everyone to show up being authentic and raw and having these moments, because these are the rich moments that actually help us grow. And I think having these conversations with each other is I'm enjoying just listening to both of you talk and hearing your perspectives. So I've got to imagine everyone else is as well. So this brings me to my last question, which is around, we are starting to see businesses reopen. I know, like, the original Pancake House reopened up there in the north side, and there's several of our favorite restaurants that are starting to reopen. We haven't gone out and been in the space, we've just done takeout, but we're starting to see some businesses reopen. We're starting to see people considering how to go back to work, how they're going to go back to workspaces, and what that's going to look like. So how do you see the lesson that you've learned? How do you see it translating as we move into this new space, or how would you like to see that come across? Let's go back to Denise.
Well, going back to the awareness and the things that are tolerated, it first created an awareness with the pandemic that there were people that were compromised health situations that we needed to be more aware of and considerate of. Then we go into highest unemployment in years, and thinking, I'm like Stefanie, you know, I'm fortunate that I have money in savings and my business is doing well, but how many people have lost their jobs and don't know how they're going to pay their rent or feed their families, and then going through the Black Lives Matter movement that's going on right now, and really thinking about that experience and how people are experiencing things in different ways that I experience them, and sometimes I don't have that awareness. So moving forward, it's really, to me, again, about slowing down and thinking and being more thoughtful, and knowing that I know this, and I don't really always feel this way because the world does not rotate around me, that who I am and my experiences are not who everybody is and what their experiences are. And just being more aware of that and having better conversations with people. There's two Black teenagers that live next door to me, and we've had conversations, and I've asked them, is this how you really feel? And they're like, yes, it is. I was like, gosh, I can't even imagine that for myself or my children. It kind of broke my heart. So really moving forward, I really want to stay aware, and I want to no longer tolerate, if you know how sometimes we don't speak up when people are saying things that we should probably speak up about, and that's not the way I'm going to move forward.
That's awesome. I love it. And both of you are coaches from different backgrounds, so it's always about what's the action you're going to take, right? Like I think both of you have asked me that question. What's the action you're going to take, Terry, now that you have this new knowledge? So I love it. Thank you. Okay, Stefanie, how do you see these applying?
Yeah, so for me, a couple of different things. So I have a business model shift coming. You know, when I looked around at the beginning of this, all of my professional service clients, I saw them trading, what's it called, dollar for hours or hours for dollars, right? Like at some point in consulting, you max out how many hours you can get paid for or bill for, because we all only get 168 hours a week. And I've yet to find a consulting firm where the people don't routinely put in 60, 80 hours a week just to run this business, right? And that's at the firm level, and not all solopreneurs run like that, but a lot of firms and solopreneurs do to make their business work. And I was like, I can't keep doing that because I am now officially in that trap. And so for me, I had to look around and say, okay, what will people need moving out of this? And what do I want to do with this information? And so I've got some online programs that will come on board that will bring together people in community that want to learn how to be pro troublemakers. So I'm super stoked about that. That will get me out of that hours for dollars thing that all consultants fall into. That's the long game. You know, that'll take me a couple of years to ramp that up into a viable piece of business. But that was the inspiration. Like, to me, that was the frustration level where I'm like, okay, I've got to make this happen, and it's in the works. And so I'm really proud of that. So that will be going on. And then also just recrafting my schedule. What I've discovered for me is that if I can have meetings mostly in the afternoon and make sure that I get my work done in the morning, that has been a game changer for my mental energy. Just allowing me the space to do the deep work in the morning. And I teach this stuff, y'all, and I don't always do it. But being forced to slow down because the client work got rescheduled and reshuffled and all of this stuff gave me that space to be like, oh, and so I'm excited to honor my new schedule moving forward. So I have that time for myself in the morning. And then, you know, from the the Black Lives Matters movement, you know, this is a conversation that I hope real change comes out of it. I hope we don't go back to a complacent place, right? This term emerged multiple years ago. Like, you know, Trayvon Martin, George Floyd, like these names keep coming up. Emmett Till, Emmett Till, y'all, in the early part of the 19th century should have been Black Lives Matters movement, and it was not. Like, I don't know what to do with that. But I want to be part of making sure that this conversation doesn't spike and valley. And part of my role in that is being a bridge between people who are privileged and people who are not privileged. I've known that for a very long time. And that's because of the own lack of privilege that I emerged from in my family of origin, and what the life of privilege that I've built now. I know that that's part of my life's mission, is to be that bridge. And I speak with white middle class Gen X dudes about their privilege. So that will continue. And people know that when they say things in my presence, that like you'll see them look at me like, oh, you're going to get called out now. Sorry about you. Let's talk about that. You know, and I've had clients, one guy, Gen X dude, mid-50s, he goes, you know what? I've realized that I used to say things or think things that Trump says out loud, and I don't want to be like that anymore. And we had a whole 2-hour conversation about race and his lack of awareness of what the world is really like outside of his very safe bubble. I'm proud of that stuff, and that stuff will have to continue if people want to work with me. And I mean that in the most loving and compassionate way.
And I'm sure we're all taking it that way, right?
Yes.
Because it's all coming from here. We're all coming from our heart. And I want to thank you both for sharing and just being open and sharing from both being in quarantine, working through COVID-19 crisis, as well as Black Lives Matter, and who knows what will come in the future. And the reason why we wanted to put this together is because these lessons need to live on, just like Black Lives Matter should not be an ebb and flow conversation, right? These are racial inequalities, racial inequities that are happening, that this conversation needs to continue just the same way that we're going to have future pandemics, and we're going to have to figure out how we respond. So we wanted to capture these lessons so that they live on and they're not just lost into the ether. So I wanted to thank you, first of all, for coming on and sharing your thoughts, your perspectives, and being open about sharing that. I appreciate it, and I'm sure anyone listening is going to be appreciative of that as well. So as we wrap up, I always like to wrap up with any last words of wisdom, because you both shared things that are so powerful, right? Being like having this level of awareness and carrying this forward as we move forward. And then Stefanie, like how are we taking ownership of what we can do and acknowledging our privileges and figuring out what we're going to do with that as we move forward to keep the conversations at the forefront, the conversations that need to be there. So as we wrap up, is there any words of wisdom or comments or favorite quotes that you want to share?
I have a favorite quote, and I've had it for a long time, but I think it's very relevant right now. And it is, the best way to predict the future is to create the future. And that is just, I've always believed in that quote, but I think it is so very relevant right now. So that's one of my favorite quotes.
Do you know who it's from?
I think it's Abraham Lincoln.
Okay. That's awesome. I love that. Thank you.
Awesome. I have one from Mr. Rogers. He is a leadership guru, little known one. But I've been using this as I've been training other leaders on the 4 phases of disaster recovery and helping people transition into each phase of these. But he says, often when you think you're at the end of something, you're at the beginning of something else. And I know that's been true in my own life, and I've seen it be true in my clients' lives and my friends' lives. And we just have to remember that nothing is over until it's over. And if it's not over, it's not over. And again, I learned that in life coaching school, so bear with me, people. But it is so true. Like, you know, I feel like in some ways our world has been calling for an awakening in many fronts for a long time. And by God, 2020 has brought it to us in many, many ways. You know, if we don't awaken now, Godzilla's coming for us. Like, the universe is asking us to find a better way to be humans. And it's bringing us things to pay attention to and redirect us towards humanity. And I want to pay attention.
That's awesome. I love both of you so much. Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your lessons. This was amazing. I got chills multiple times as you both were talking, because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And you know, tugs on my heartstrings where I'm just like, oh, I can, but don't cry.
You let it out, Terry. You let those tears out.
But I always enjoy my encounters with each of you, and I'm glad that you two are able to connect now, and that we were able to help you share your lessons learned with our community out there. So I'm just going to sign off, and for those of you who are out there watching, thank you so much for coming back and checking out our series. Like we said, the series is now Lessons for Now, and these are the lessons that we should be able to carry on throughout our lives. Awareness and taking that ownership and identifying how we move forward. I mean, those are lessons for life, right? Not just lessons from quarantine, and not just lessons for tomorrow and today. It's for the tomorrow's tomorrow. All right, so thank you again for joining us. Thank you, lovely ladies, for being here, and we will see you next week. See you later.